Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Inside a Distributor's Mind, How a Quality Product Information Drives Online Sales and Improves Channel Partner Relationships. My name is Matt Loyal. I'm the technology writer here for Industry Week. We're producing the event. It is sponsored today by Codifyd. Before we get going, just a little bit of intro. At Industry Week, our mission is to advance the business of manufacturing. The IW staff is dedicated to working with you to ID and share the trends, the strategies, the technologies, the best practices that will help you build more innovative, more competitive, and more profitable businesses. Now, as part of this webinar, we'll have a live Q&A session. We'll be accepting questions throughout the session today. You have that Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. To improve the chances of your question being addressed, do not wait until the end of the event to submit them. Ask them as those questions occur to you. And to do that, to send in your question, just type it in the Q&A box and click submit. Easy as that. We'll attempt to get to all questions, although be aware some other attendees might be asking similar questions worded in a slightly different manner. So we'll try to group those questions together, answer them all at once. Before I introduce today's speaker, there are a couple housekeeping issues that I'd like to review, especially for those of you who may not have been on an IW webinar before. This will be available on demand in the next couple of days. To access it, you can use the same login information you used for the live webinar today. We'll also send out a post-event email. It'll remind you about the on-demand version. We ask that for the next hour or so, you please disable your pop-up blockers. If you're using Internet Explorer, you can disable that pop-up blocker by going into the Tools menu, click on Internet Options, and then choose the Privacy tab at the top. Tools, Internet Options, Privacy tab. If you look at the widget bar at the bottom of your console, you'll see icons. They allow you to open and close windows on your screen. The first few widgets were automatically opened when you entered the webinar. They include the slide area, the audio controls, the speaker information, the Q&A box, where again you can ask a question to our presenters, and again, do not wait until the end. Ask them as they come to you. Next, you see those blue icons. They're your opportunity to get a little social on this. The webinar will allow you to take full advantage of social networking, so share your thoughts with your LinkedIn community, send out tweets to your followers, you can post comments on your Facebook page, or you can just go old school social networking. Send an email to a friend, encourage them to watch the archived version of this webinar. You can do that by clicking the icon in the widget bar to launch each feature. Last few icons, there are other tools you might wish to use. Maybe, maybe not. You've got the you can use the resource list icon. That will help you download a copy of the presenter slides as a PDF. You can then save or print them. The red checkmark button launches a survey. We'd like you to complete it at the end of the presentation. The yellow question mark button, that brings up a series of troubleshooting tips. I will remind you about the survey before the end of the hour. Also, the webinar allows you to have it your way. Customize your webcast console. You can drag the title bar to move windows. You can minimize a window by clicking that blue button. You can maximize it with the green button. You can resize most windows. Build it whichever way you like. Finally, if the slides, for whatever reason, stop advancing, or if you're having problems with audio, the first thing we ask you to do is press the F5 key. That's your first troubleshoot. It will refresh the webinar console on your screen. If you have other problems, let us know, and we'll get you back on. Now, let me introduce today's presenters. We do have a little information about both of them, a little bio. As mentioned earlier, the event is brought to you by Codifyd, and we have two fantastic speakers today, Rob and Alan. You will see their bios pop up on the screen here in just a moment. All right. See Alan Miller. Alan Miller, you can read along with me. Background in supply chain management and deliver strategic change. In his current role as Global Head of Content with RS Components, Alan responsible for transforming the content function into a customer-first, digitally focused organization. He's involved building a highly engaged, high-performing team, executes a program of brilliant basics that delivers increased customer satisfaction. He's responsible for turning content into strategic asset for RS and defining and implementing a content strategy across people, systems, and processes to enable the company's digital ambitions. And then we've got one more slide here about your other presenter. That is Rob Stowell. He's a client partner with Codifyd. 15 years plus experience in digital commerce solutions and product content strategy, worked with numerous Fortune 500 distributors and manufacturers, helps them understand the importance of product content for driving revenue and results. Deep understanding of business professional services, technology, and e-commerce solution. Rob works with leading digital commerce organizations to define, to develop, to execute strategies that meet and exceed their business goals. That is all I have. I'm going to turn the floor over to Alan and Rob. They are the experts. And for about the next hour, I'm going to dive right in. Hopefully you enjoy this. It'll be a great presentation. Gentlemen?
Thank you very much for the introduction, Matt, and thanks to the audience for attending today and giving us the opportunity to talk about the importance of content or product content as it pertains to e-commerce and e-commerce results. First, a little bit about Codifyd. We've been in business for 15 years. We are product content experts who help companies drive digital results. For the last 15 years, we've been working with manufacturers and distributors to help them develop the strategy, tactics, and execution to do things like help deliver a great online brand experience for customers, drive e-commerce results, or help them reduce cost and increase process efficiency with the idea of product content. It's important, before we continue to, as we continue, to talk about the size of the opportunity within the marketplace today. Digital commerce is roughly a $1.3 trillion industry today, but B2B digital e-commerce is roughly 3 times that size, right? So $6.7 trillion of opportunity to exist within B2B. It's also important to note that B2B as a market is growing at twice the size of the traditional commerce market, providing companies with lots of opportunity. You're seeing changes in the market being driven by these statistics. You're seeing a lot more e-retailers getting into the space of business-to-business, traditionally owned by business-to-business. And as the market grows and evolves, we're starting to see changes in the way that the world thinks about product content and how to transact product content. I use the term product content. Here's just roughly a definition of what I mean by that term. It's actually one of the questions I get asked the most. What do we mean when we say product content? Very simply, it's categories. Categories define kind of how you drill down in order to find products. It's attributes. Attributes define how you compare products once you're done with your search. It's data. Data represents things like pricing, transactional related information. And it's also the rich content that you'd see on a landing page of a website, or the feature copy that helps customers differentiate different products, and it helps distributors sell their products online. We have some visual examples of this next, but let's talk a little bit about why it's important and keep it as simple as possible. Right, so your customers cannot buy a product they cannot find. That seems pretty simple and straightforward, right? So we have to enable customers to be able to find the product that they're looking for. But additionally, customers will not buy the product if they found the right product, but they're not exactly sure that they have the product that they're looking for. So it's important that you provide content that customers can trust. So you have to improve their findability and then provide additional enriched content in order to make them trust both the content and your brand. So sometimes these things are made clearer by visual examples. And here's an example from RS Components. Right, so what you're seeing here is the different attributes of product content that I discussed. You're seeing the opportunity to browse by category, right? So those are the category structures. You're seeing the opportunity to sort by attributes. You see that on websites as an opportunity to kind of narrow by filters. You're seeing technical copy, product copy, features and bullets that allow people to understand exactly what product it is and what product, the information that you'd like to represent. In addition, you're seeing a consistent, organized product information. In the B2B space, that's critically important. And it's easier to see why it's important if we compare some good product content to some not so good product content. So we found this visual example of the exact same product. On the left-hand side, you do have an image. That's a good thing. But really, the only information we're able to discover about that particular product is that nobody has yet posted a review. So lacking any sort of technical information on the product, you're more than likely, if you manage to find the product, you probably wouldn't purchase it. Whereas if you were to compare that example to what you're seeing on the right-hand side, you have lots of opportunities to understand if you have the right product and whether or not it's going to support the application that you intend to purchase it for. So that's an example of good content compared to bad content, and I think everyone in the audience would agree that it's much easier to understand what you're buying with the right-hand example. This is critically important, especially in B2B e-commerce. B2C has been around for a long time, so business to consumer is pretty easy to understand. A typical B2C product has fewer attributes and less complexity. Nobody searches for a book, for example, by the number of pages. So the B2C market has kind of evolved around the idea of relatively simple product, whereas for the B2B market, you've got more technical products. And with more technical products, they require better organization, more educational content, more understanding of the application of the product as well. When it gets down to onboarding product, right, so how distributors are pulling information from manufacturers, typically in B2C there are fewer vendors involved, there's less complexity involved in the products, whereas most B2B distributors that we work with have hundreds of channel partners, creating a lot of complexity around the idea of product content management and onboarding. And consequences. So the consequences of getting data on a T-shirt wrong are you'd probably have a return for the T-shirt. But within complex B2B products, you could have entire massive assembly line failures hinging on data that's incorrect about a small valve in a production line. Or if a ladder rating is incorrect and there's a failure in the ladder, distributors can actually be held liable for some of the failures within product content. So, we jokingly say at Codifyd B2B product content, can save lives, is how important it is. So let's talk a little bit about, how product content is typically transacted, right? How does it get exchanged between manufacturers and distributors, and what changes are we seeing in the market? Right, so, here we see that, product content has evolved a new set of challenges. Distribution has evolved overall. I've been in the business for roughly 15 years. And when the idea of product content started, distributors bore the cost, right? Distributors had to pick up the cost of producing product content, and that was kind of the way that business was done. But lately, we're discovering that manufacturers are facing a whole new set of challenges, in part led by the retailers that are coming into the game. Distributors are no longer bearing fully the cost of poor product content. They're pushing the the consequences of bad product content or the costs of bad product content onto manufacturers. And if manufacturers don't comply these days, well, there are penalties, fees, refusal to carry products. Sometimes the loss is represented in lack of speed to market, or sometimes failure to qualify for benefits programs. So some distributors offer benefits for good content as opposed to penalties associated to bad content. But more and more manufacturers are starting to have to face these penalties, and more manufacturers are learning that they have to get their content correct. Right, so a real simple visual example, right? Onboarding data for a shirt is pretty simple. Everyone understands what a shirt is or how we shop for a shirt. But for more complex product, such as those in the RF line of MOSFET, wow, that's a far more complicated product to deal with. And we'll talk a little bit about why. Right, so the MOSFET is a far more technical product. It has far more attributes. The data that supports those attributes is more complex and more precise. Typically, when there's a higher number of products within the product category or product line. So if you don't get this right, you'll experience dissatisfaction about the format of the content, the quality of the content, and again, you'll start to incur those penalties. Right, so this is also important to note that the vocabulary on these products isn't standardized. There is no reference guide that says these are the proper attributes when it comes to explaining a complex product like a MOSFET. So this is an example of the exact same MOSFET, the information requirement from several distribution channels. And if you take a look at it, you'll realize they're asking kind of for the same types of information, But they're not asking exactly. They're not saying, okay, we all need these attributes and these attributes only. The attributes are described slightly differently. The way the attributes are presented on the page are different. And this means that manufacturers don't have an opportunity to standardize. They don't know what to standardize to. In addition, most manufacturers are trying to use the channel between manufacturers and distributors in order to promote attributes that they feel are important, right, that they feel differentiate the product. It's not been, to date, a very cooperative discussion between manufacturers and distributors as to what content should look like. And part of the reason for that is that the cost of reworking content in a manual way has been very prohibitive. So nobody wants to have that conversation about how they cooperate and how information should be exchanged. And we know it's a big problem. Most manufacturers have, thousands of channels. Most B2B distributors have thousands and thousands of customers, creating a remarkably complex ecosystem of how information needs to get exchanged between manufacturers and distributors and other channel partners. So in assessing a solution for this, the manual approach of, we're going to continue to fill in the gaps by having someone type in what content needs to look like, well, that's a good idea. That's been the idea in the industry for many, many years now, but frankly, that idea doesn't scale. So we need to start looking at technology solutions that will scale the idea of mapping one complex data set to another complex data set. It's not so simple as just making sure that you're mapping pricing. You have to map those complicated product attributes in a three-stage process. You need to make sure those manufacturer categories align to the distributor categories. Once done, then you need to align those attributes as well to make sure those attributes are showing up in the distributor's format. And then you have a third step in which you actually need to transform the product data itself, because what might be acceptable to a manufacturer might not be acceptable to a distributor overall. So there's an opportunity for improvement here in the way that we synchronize data and syndicate data between manufacturers and distributors. And to talk a little bit more about that, Alan Miller has graciously agreed to give us kind of a look at what he's been doing for the last couple of years or so and give us insight as to what goes on in a distributor's mind. Alan?
Okay, thank you, Rob. Yeah, so as Rob said, what I've got for you all now, I'm going to talk a little bit about our role as a distributor in that exchange that Rob's described, a little bit about content and why it's important and valuable for us, and how we've been evolving and adapting our model to be more effective at the use of content. So hopefully try and bring the challenges, but also how we're working with it to life for all of you. So firstly, a little bit about RS Components. So as the bio said, my job title is the Global Head of Content for RS Components. We're a high service level distributor, so we operate in the business-to-business space, serving engineers with components. So we have a product range of in excess of 500,000 different products, and really our aim is to be providing components to engineers all the way through the product life cycle. So in the beginning, the kind of components they need to design products and solve problems, and equally at the end of the design cycle where they're maintaining devices and products and so on. So we're originally a UK company, but currently we operate in 32 countries around the world. So it's a full global footprint. That product offer is pretty much a global one, and we ship around about 44,000 parcels of components a day. So we have quite a size of scale. And those customers who value us, they value us because of the breadth of the product range, and they value us because of our service reliability. But actually, interestingly, in the online space, the quality of the information we provide around the product fits into that value proposition very closely. So from a content perspective, when we think about that, it's very important to me that we are a customer-first digital organization. So the team that I manage are all measured and objective. Their objectives are set based on the customer satisfaction with the content that we present and the commercial value we're able to drive through that content. And that's important because we understand that it needs to be a strategic asset for us. So what's important, organizations spend a wealth of time and effort and often sales resources going out and prospecting for customers and trying to drive sales. And the reality of the guys who are already there, they're already through the door and on our website, they're kind of the coalition of the willing, right? So they're there and wanting to do something. So not being able to prevent them with the information they need and not being able to answer their questions is criminal, because they're there and they're trying to do something. So my team and our activity is all about that information, and we try to take a really ruthless view from an outside-in perspective. So it's very, very important to us that when we're thinking about what the customers need, it isn't the things that we would like to be creating and producing and pushing out to them. It's the things that they are telling us that they need. And that's how we've set ourselves up. So if I move on to the next slide, this kind of shows the myriad of areas and the myriad of interactions that happen with the content. And one of the key points about this is that actually, if the content is in great shape and it does all of the things that I was describing previously, then it can and it should be reused many times, and it should be channel agnostic. So once you have it as an asset, it's possible to reuse it in many different places. But as a distributor, because we don't manufacture anything, the source of that great content, and in particular the accurate and relevant content, is very often the manufacturer. It's the right place to be getting that information from. And to be able to cope with the size and scale that we have as an organization, that model has to be flexible. So it is not possible for us to be writing or sourcing or searching data sheets to get all of the information we need to meet those customer needs. So we need to have a flexible model. We need to be able to get it from the manufacturer and other sources. But actually, currently for us, that's not very easy to do. Certainly in a cost-efficient or a resource-efficient way, it's not been easy. Systems can sometimes be a barrier and a challenge, or require investment themselves. And it's hard yards to do today, and that typically has an impact on either the quality of the information we're able to represent, the regularity with which we can refresh it and present it, or our time to market with the products that we want to launch and refresh. And this just gives a kind of an example of some of the challenges that we face. So we have core processes, but those core processes, they have to meet a number of internal needs, and also they need to deal with a wide variety of inputs. So as Rob said, how the information is produced, how that information is standardized and normalized typically isn't common, because everybody is approaching it from a point of view of what's important to them. So, and for us at RS, actually, one of the things that drives some of those requirements are our own internal systems. So it isn't a particularly customer view of it, but it still presents us with the challenge in the sense that we need all of that information to be able to present the product effectively online. Customers typically will not care about the challenges that we face. What they're looking for is consistency and reliability about the information we present. So consequently, for us to navigate our own challenges in terms of the systems and processes, for us to be able to standardize the information that comes to us on the inbound, it takes an awful lot of time and effort and resource. And where that gets us to is actually we are probably causing dissatisfaction amongst our customers because the information isn't there or the products aren't there and available, or we're causing dissatisfaction with some of the suppliers that supply into us because they're not able to get their products to market as quickly as they would like. And a phrase that I hear quite a lot from those manufacturers is typically, all of the information is available, we don't understand why you don't just take it from us and reuse it. And of course we would love to, but the challenge in doing that is getting access to, as the slide shows, the various different outputs, the various different formats and so on. Excuse me one second. So I talked earlier about needing to find a flexible model for the production and management of our content. And I'll go on now to talk about the solution that we've worked on with Codifyd. So what we're talking about is a proof of concept, something that Rob and I have been discussing for quite some time, which actually now we have in operation and we're working, and it's called the bridge. And essentially, this is about, from my perspective, in really simple terms, working with Codifyd so that that information that our manufacturers have available can be tapped into and utilized and then turned into formats and standardized files and processes that we can then use to shorten our time to market substantially. So for the pilot manufacturer that we have off and running, we reduced our time to market by over 50%. As we learn through the process, that will reduce further, and it's about tapping into the assets and the information that's available, making it a very low-rent, simple solution for the manufacturer, because ultimately it exists for them and they just want us to sell their product, and then fitting it into our own processes so that we get the quality that we're looking for, the customer satisfaction that we're looking for, but also the pace. And initially, when we talked about being able to onboard this information and working collaboratively with Codifyd and our manufacturers, we focused in a couple of areas. So we focused primarily on the transactional information that our systems required to be able to sell the product, and we focused on some of the traditional types of content that we were used to sourcing. So product attributes that featured in the filter experience in search, and also reusing those to display on the product page, and typically assets like images and data sheets. But actually what we've gone on to discover, what you can see there in the slide window, that's a typical product page for us. And provided the information exists with the manufacturer, what we're finding is it's possible to collaborate on all of it. And there are elements of it that we would reuse straight away. There are elements of it that very definitely we want to standardize in our own format, so that we have a brand and a tone of voice that our customers are used to. And there are elements where, if I think about authored text that describes the product, the information that comes from the manufacturer is typically very, very rich and useful. We may still want to make that unique to RS so that it supports things like search engine optimization, but in that flexible model that we have to have for our size and scale, it's still far better to be bringing that in and adapting it than it is to write it from scratch. We just don't have the headroom to be doing that. So really the point about this is the concept that we're using and the model that I aspire to for our content team is to be able to access and use this lots and lots. And the initiative began really when we were thinking about time to market for new products, but this is also a great way. This works very well for me in terms of being able to refresh existing content, upgrade it, adapt it, making sure that what we display to the customers is in tune with the needs that they have. And really what this slide is doing, if you kind of refer back to the previous slide with the multiple inputs and so on and compare it with this slide, really this is just to try and describe that simplified process. So by having the bridge between us and the manufacturer, all of that variation is removed. And what it means for my guys and my team when we're producing the content is that things are coming in standardized in the format that we need, and what we can focus on is not navigating the process and trying to push things through in different formats and different styles, but actually focus on the outcome and what appears in front of the customer, because those those back-end processes are taken care of and simplified. So where that gets us to is really it's kind of, I described the vision that we have in terms of this customer-first digital content, it being value add for our customers and giving them their needs. That's exactly what we've got. So if you take the pain of the process out of it, if you take the variation out of it, then what you're able to do is focus on building out great content. It means our basics and our platforms are rock solid and it can be reused, and it means that that content starts to have value for us, and we can focus on enhancing that value and understanding how we reuse it, which is exactly what the process is for. And what this slide is really saying is it helps us to support all of the various functions and the various objectives that we have within our organization, primarily in a digital and an online space, but actually the content is suitable in all of the channels that we might go to. So that's just about it from me. I think from by way of a bit of a conclusion, I think everybody knew, prior to us working on Bridge and driving this forward, I think everybody knew and understood there needed to be more flexible models. Our size and scale in terms of the product offer and the amount of content we wanted to use has been growing steadily for quite some time. And I think the part that we were missing was a way of doing this and doing it collaboratively without it being a massive burden and overhead for the manufacturers on one end, or requiring huge investment in systems and tools and processes from our perspective. And what it feels to me like we've done is we've focused very much on the quality of the outcome and the things that are very important, and we're able to flex the content that we work on based on what's valuable and available from the manufacturer's perspective and what's important from our customer's perspective. I like the flexibility that we have with it, and I also like, very importantly, the time to market reductions that we're able to get, but the opportunity to revisit existing content and enhance that further. So that's probably it for me in terms of describing what we've done with the capability and what we're about. So I'll hand back to Matt for any questions.
And we do have a few here queued up, and we'll start with Rob, actually. This one's directed to Rob. What is a good first step for manufacturers to take if they want to improve their product information for e-commerce? And this notes that they're a mid-sized manufacturer, but I would imagine it applies across the spectrum of size.
Sure. And it's actually a great question. I guess my first advice would be to understand your own product information relative to the channel requirements that you have. We've discussed that there's no standard format, or there's no standard around what attributes are associated to what product, but there are best practices that manufacturers can put in place for their product information that helps facilitate some of the things that Alan was talking about, right? So flexibility in getting it to multiple channels, speed to market, these are things that manufacturers need to be made aware of. So the very first thing that you should start with is kind of understanding where your product information is relative to what your channel requirements are, because that will define how you store information as a manufacturer. Lots of manufacturers have evolved their product information out of kind of the print catalog world, and they need to break that mindset to understand that the e-commerce channels and flexibility in channel is of primary importance.
Actually, the next one also for Rob, and it's more of a product-based question. So how is Bridge different from current product onboarding processes? What kind of differentiates it from what's out there?
Oh, sure. And I guess that question would be specific to distributor, right? So most distributors and manufacturers have two different product onboarding processes, and that kind of grew out of the technology that they're using to do them, right? So there's typically one product onboarding process for transactive information that comes out of an ERP system. So things like price go through one process. And then there's a second process that happens between the marketing departments, which is how do we exchange images, how do we exchange enriched product information. And in both of those processes, you encounter a lot of complexity around what things are called. So Bridge was designed to do both of those things. It's designed to kind of move those attributes that are related to transactions. It's also designed to move over the attributes that are related to describing a product, and it makes transformations, as we've talked about, from the manufacturer standard to what distributors actually need.
Next question comes from Olivier. How do you suggest to implement an effective online training platform aimed at our distributors' network to support them in selling and supporting our products?
Yeah, sure. I guess that one's for me. And I think I need a little more detail on the question, but I think it's relative to a lot of distributors are trying to use things like a vendor portal or other ways to educate people in terms of what needs to happen to get content from the manufacturer to the distributor. It's an excellent question. Some of the things that are successful are video training programs, et cetera. But for the purposes of the conversation today, what makes Bridge effective is, since you're not asking manufacturers to change their behavior, there's no need for complicated online training to tell them how to use a vendor portal, because the message to manufacturers is, just give us your content or show us your content structured the way that you want to structure it. And Bridge will actually, it maps the content from one data set to another, and then it maintains those maps long term. And what that means to a manufacturer is if they submit another SKU within the same category, that will automatically carry over too. So manufacturers have been very receptive to the technology because it doesn't require training. Remember what manufacturers have to go through. They have thousands of channels and everybody vying to be the most important customer they have within that channel. It is impossible for a manufacturer to staff thousands of resources in order to effectively train in what each distributor requires. So this is slightly a different value proposition, and we think more effective than what we've seen in the market today.
Up next here for Alan the first. What's been your experience with using Bridge internally? Does it require a lot of support from Codifyd, or have you been able to use it relatively easily on your own?
Yeah, sure, thank you. So the answer is very easily on our own. So the way the concept is set up, we rely on the guys at Codifyd to take care of the technical bridging, exactly as it describes, so the technical connections between us and the assets that already exist with our manufacturers. And then the content itself is delivered to us in the formats that we already use, so it slots straight into our processes. So it's nice and straightforward, and there's a nice delineation between the things that I'm interested in, that I see as adding value, which is getting that content in front of our customers and being able to use it, and leveraging that technical aspect, the technical skills that we have and the relationship we have with Codifyd to get at the assets that probably already existed with the manufacturers. We just couldn't get at it ourselves. And if we were able to, if we were to do that, what we would be doing is almost building a relationship with each manufacturer independently. So from our perspective, really straightforward. It looks and feels just like all of our existing processes from our guys. If it didn't, then it wouldn't be adding value. It wouldn't be a change in what we do today.
And that is always one of the things that it comes down to, is the value add. The next question, Alan, kind of ties in to the last one. What challenges or obstacles have you faced with the implementation and setup of the Codifyd Bridge?
Yeah, probably a couple that spring to mind. So the first one relates back to the relationship with the manufacturer. So I remember, part of how they articulated their dissatisfaction with our approach to gathering content previously was that they believe all of the information that we need was there and readily available. And I think what we found is the information is very definitely there. I think it's not that straightforward, and it's very different manufacturer by manufacturer to get into it. But if anything, that kind of makes the case for building the connection and being able to reuse it, because actually the process of getting at it, whether it was for this month's launch of 20 products or for all products forevermore, it's the same process of discovery that you have to go on, and the same connections. So this, solving those problems with each manufacturer takes time, and it's important not to underestimate that. But you only do it once per manufacturer, and my guess is every distributor only has a finite list of those manufacturers who are able to do this. So, once it's solved, it's solved. And then I think the second one is an internal cultural thing around the value that people will see in content that they haven't necessarily created from scratch themselves. So, people are proud of the product ranges that they're required to sell and promote. they're proud of the content that they build around it, and it requires some change management and a bit of a cultural shift to help them to understand that size and scale means that we need to bring in through flexible models, we need to be able to reuse that content, and their value add isn't to create everything from scratch, it's to pick the high profile products or the ones that we can really enhance to drive customer value and focus in that area. So that's taken some time to get them to adjust to that. But actually what's interesting is once we've been through the process and they see the changes in time to market, they see the reduced frustration with the manufacturers they're required to manage, that all tends to go away and they see the commercial upside. But it took some time to get to that point. It's a touch and feel thing, right? People feel responsible and accountable for the content they're responsible for, so which is a good thing, but there needs to be adaptability in the model.
And Alan, with what you just said in terms of it being touch and feel and kind of taking a while, just kind of curious, one example, but how long did it take to really get comfortable for you?
So for me, I've always been comfortable. I guess I see the strategic challenges that we're facing around being responsible as a content organization for high quality content. I see the customer feedback where it hasn't worked for us and it isn't standardized. I see and hear firsthand from some of our manufacturers their frustration. So very quickly it became apparent to me that for us to be successful and solve those problems, we needed to do things in a different way. For the guys that are responsible for the content today, it varies. So we have a number of people in the team who have great technical skills, engineering backgrounds, and for those guys, they have a very kind of binary outlook on this. Everything has to be perfect, it's got to be right, and it may not be if they don't spend time and effort looking at the content and managing it and manipulating it. So those guys take quite a long period of time to change their mindset. But when you present them with the customer satisfaction figures and they see that it's shifting and changing, they can buy into that and they understand that this process is adding value. Contrast that with other members of the team who are perhaps less technically minded and more online savvy, people who are wanting to drive commercial value in a digital sense. They get it really quickly, and they're the kind of people who are off looking for the opportunity to add additional value. So you get a real mix dependent upon the team. But ultimately it comes from, our approach very much is to keep bringing the people back to what are the customers telling us and what value are we adding commercially with the content that we produce. And as long as you can keep revisiting those, then it answers its own questions.
And I just have a question. I'm kind of curious here, and this is for both of you, Alan and Rob. I'm just kind of curious. Moving forward, what can you envision for the bridge for working together and for anybody who might adopt it?
Yeah, so why don't I go first? That'll save Rob the challenge of pitching to me live on the webinar. So I think for me, it's about it's the two opportunities that I described. So we know with the manufacturers who are able to work in this way, we get massive expansions of the product range very, very quickly and very simply. So there's reduced resources from our perspective, better time to market, broader product ranges, which our customers value us for. So I would like to extend out through the manufacturer set that we deal with and work in that way. And I think the other direction is about refreshing existing content across more manufacturers as well. So today, there's quite a broad set. We're now getting into things like the descriptive content and all of those kind of things. It makes me wonder what else of the content that we would build around a product would be available through this route. And I think we discover that each time we move on to a new manufacturer, the onboarding processes get shorter and sharper because you learn from each of them. So that prompts you to talk about, so what else, what other content is available, and how much more of a product range of yours am I able to offer. So Rob's probably got a more strategic and technological vision. For me, it's about using this and gaining as much value in the here and now as possible.
Yeah, Alan, I'd stress one of the points that you said. I see Bridge as a real opportunity for manufacturers to innovate through the channel. Right, we know what's important to product content today. We know that it's evolving more towards video, towards how-to manuals, towards, kind of more advanced forms of content. And as we start to evolve the product and the sophistication of the channel, manufacturers will have an opportunity to differentiate by providing new and exciting types of content through the channel. So I think that's kind of an important part of the roadmap as well. Aside from that, I would reinforce the points that Alan made that it's doing more of the same across a wider scale because as we automate more and more of the channel, it becomes more and more efficient, and we look forward to reporting back at a future date.
Look forward to hearing the report whenever that is, whether it's in 6 months or a year or 2 years on the outer edge of Moore's Law. Don't think we have any other questions queued up. I do want to remind everybody on the call, please take a few moments before you finish up for the afternoon to fill out the feedback form, and again, please disable the pop-up blocker so you can receive that form. Rob, Alan, fantastic presentation, very, very cool technology. And anything else that either of you would like to kind of discuss or add before the end of the hour?
Yeah, from my perspective, of course, we'd like to hear more from anybody who has any questions. What you're seeing on the screen now is a way to contact us in case you have any sort of questions or require any sort of follow-up.
Excellent. industryweek.com, or if you want to go shorthand, iw.com as well. You can feel free to log in to view it again. You can encourage your friends and colleagues to view it. And if you have any other questions that were not popping up in your brain, you have the contact information there on the screen right now if you want to ask that later this week or at a later date. Thank you very much for listening in, for your attendance today. Have a great, great afternoon and a great rest of the week. Thank you very much.